All right, Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, we have the great Dave Hill. Dave is a musician, comedian, writer, actor, radio host, artist. This guy does everything. We talk about the music a lot on this episode, writing as well. Dave has been in a lot of bands. The two we talk about most is Valley Lodge and Sons of Elvis, as well as Cobra Verte. Dave has a few things out right now. He has a new book called The Awesome Game. Valley Lodge also has a new record out called Shadows in Paradise. Dave's on the road. If you go to davehill.com, you can see all the dates. He's also in the process of writing a comic book. We'll get into that in the interview. This was an honor to chat with a guy who's done so much and continues to do so much. One thing I want to note, during the recording of this, there was this crazy storm in Northeast Ohio. Tornadoes in Parma, a lot of power was out. It was not good. It was a wild storm, and I'm wishing everyone that lost power and suffered damages from the storm, I'm wishing them well. I bring that up because during the conversation, my voice gets a little distracted because there's a crazy storm happening out the window, and just trying to play it cool. And luckily where I was at, everyone was okay. And it goes on like you don't notice too much. But there is some like what is going on in my voice at one point, and that's why. So I just wanted to put that out there and explain it, and also wish everyone well. So it was great to chat with Dave. I'm really excited to share this interview. If you hear anything you like, if you can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Dave and sharing their insight with you. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Dave Hill. Very cool. Well, okay, so to jump into it, and I may have this wrong, did you learn guitar from Dan Smith?
No. No, I just made a joke about that.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, I'm way too old to learn that way. Unless I, didn't start till my 30s or something, which is not the case.
So, okay, so then there was a kind of a crossover from, and this may be another thing I misinterpreted. I was listening to another interview where you were talking about your book and how you started playing hockey, and then guitar kind of took over. Was that like an actual kind of transition you went through from diving into from hockey into music?
No, I mean, I always did both,
Okay.
Like I started playing piano at 8 and started playing guitar at 13. So, but it wasn't like I stopped, I played hockey until, I played in my sophomore year in college.
Okay. And with guitar, when you started playing, was it just kind of a thing to do, or were you always aiming to be in a band?
I think always aiming to be in a band. I never viewed it as like, it was just going to be a hobby or something,
Yeah.
I was always like kind of determined to rock, from, 8 years old or whatever. That's why I started taking piano lessons, because I wanted to learn guitar, but my dad wanted me to take piano first to sort of, prove that I was into music,
Yeah. That's one thing, like, because I had the same experience. I don't know what it is about like that kind of test. If you can sit through doing piano, you're worthy of guitar, because like they're two kind of different views of music. Just even how it's learned and what you do with it later. It's a completely different approach.
Yeah, I just think like, my dad's thinking was probably, because at the time, even when I started, playing guitar, playing electric guitar, like 8th grade was the year, like all of a sudden, all these kids got electric guitars. And I think my dad rightfully, recognized that, a lot of kids just wanted to make noise and, thought it was, that was their only aim. They really didn't have any discipline.
Right.
To learn how to play. And, I and really one other friend, one of my best friends still to this day, like we were the only two kids in the school who were like really disciplined about it. There were some learned kind of basic stuff, which I totally respect. I don't think everyone has to learn how to like, solo and things like that. I think it's totally fine to just be able to strum. I think that's super cool. But like, I think most of the kids that got guitars, like, lasted a few months and don't play anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a weird, it definitely, I recall that kind of part of high school as well. The vetting of like, oh wait, you stopped playing, man? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I think it's just a common, like most people don't stick with anything.
That's true. So with you and your friend, what was it looking like as far as like things you were doing to kind of keep moving each other forward and diving into like actually learning how to speak with this instrument?
I think just that, we're friends, and we were, kind of, wanted to be good, and, wanted to, be able to play the music that we liked. And I think, it's probably a competitive thing with the other kids and with each other to be good. When we saw people like who couldn't play, we were like, well, fuck that. We don't want to be like that. And then, if one of us learned one thing, the other one wanted to learn it. I think that's just kind of how it goes,
Yeah, no, I totally relate to that. My buddy Carl, who lived down the street, that's what we would do. He'd be like, oh, and it was mostly AC/DC for us, AC/DC and like Zeppelin stuff. Like, oh, I learned how to do whatever, Whole Lotta Rosie. Can you do that? Show me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. So when did like bands start? Was the first band Sons of Elvis?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that was my first, band that actually like play. I mean, I guess I was in like a bunch of other bands that played like, one talent show, this and that, or played covers and stuff. But, that was really the first band, was Sons of Elvis.
Okay. And like,
informed that I was like 19 or something.
Okay. Damn. That's like, and that's, so when you were doing Sons of Elvis, you played bass in that group. When did you start like finding out the secret to be in any band is play bass?
Well, that was, when we started, it was my same friend from, 8th grade.
Okay,
Tim
cool.
Farnan, who's now, he plays in a bunch of bands, Sweet Apple. He plays in a band, Falling Stars. He is in Cobra Verde. He's like one of the vice presidents of the Rock Hall. He and I, we formed Sons of Elvis, for fun and just to, play with our friends. And we traded off rather than like get another another person in the band. We just traded guitar and bass. And then, at the time we had no money, we didn't have like amps where you could really like, feel the air move, we didn't have half stacks or any of that. So quickly, like, I just really enjoyed the feeling of, playing bass, because even out of a small amp, you can feel the vibrations, you can feel it in your, so I just got really into it. And then it was also at a time when there like a sort of bass athleticism was sort of popular,
Yeah.
Flea and, the guy from Fishbone, I can't think of his name. Norwood from Fishbone. There was kind of these like bass players who were like really kind of like, so many bands had just like kind of like these muscular bass, muscular in their playing. So I was kind of got really into that, not slapping and popping or any of that. I think I did that for like one weekend, but generally, like, I'm horrified by that. And in fact, I've played in like bands or even just jammed, and I can't. If anyone does it, I like snap at them for doing it, and it's like such a huge judgment to like if anyone does that, unless it's like a real ace who's in like a funk band or something. But Yeah, I just got really into it, and there were some players and bands that I loved, like Lou Barlow from Dinosaur Jr. I love that he was like making this massive sound playing bass, and he played like in a very guitar-like way. Happy Chichester from Royal Crescent Mob in Columbus, he was doing like amazing things. And then Daryl Jennifer from Bad Brains. Those were like
Yeah.
three bands I was like really into at the time, and I had these bass players that were like really doing like cool stuff, and it was really like those three guys that I was like, I just want to combine what those three guys are doing and play that way.
Those are definitely heavy hitters. Were you in the Watt at all?
I love Mike Watt.
So to kind of paint the picture for me, because like I've been working the music scene around Cleveland now, but like when you were in Sons of Elvis at that time, what was the scene looking like? Who were you playing with? Where were you guys playing?
In Cleveland?
Yeah.
Well, we formed at Fordham, in the Bronx.
Oh, okay.
We were all going to college. So like three of us were from Cleveland. But we didn't, we formed in New York and kind of came up playing in the clubs in New York and got a record deal in New York, so we were really, started as a New York band, and we wound up back in Cleveland really, because I went back there first, kind of like really to visit for the weekend, and I just never came back. And the other two guys who were from Cleveland, like eventually, because we were really young, and we were in New York and just broke and working like these fucking shitty jobs. And then we got a record deal, and then we kind of realized like, oh, if we live in Cleveland, we can just live with our parents and do music full time with the money we were making off of music. Like, we didn't have to worry about paying rent in New York. So by the time we were living back in Cleveland, like we were already on MTV and stuff like that. So, it was kind of like a very, it was just very fun. Like, we certainly played with bands, but we didn't, it wasn't like we came up on that like local scene or anything like that.
Gotcha.
Since afterwards, I think we all became more a part of it, like, in playing in subsequent bands after that, for sure.
Okay. So was it kind of just like a whirlwind at first of how it like took off? Because
Sons of Elvis?
Yeah. To be just kind of starting in New York and then picked up on MTV and like getting a deal,
I don't think it felt like a whirlwind, like, because when you're that young, you're just like, oh my God, we've been a band for 3 years. Oh my God, I can't believe how long we're slaving away at this, So we were so young, I don't think we thought that at all. We were like, oh my God, but we worked hard, and like we're really determined. And I think when you're that young, in college and stuff, I think there's like a gang mentality to what you're doing that is kind of necessary if you want to succeed as a band. We were very bad when we started, but we thought we were the greatest band in the world, which is, I think, delusional, but I think like it's kind of a good attitude to have, because we were like, we're the best. We just have to keep working our asses off and actually get better and better. But I think we were just young and excited by the noise we were making, which is totally, I think, rock and roll in a nutshell. I don't even, who knows? I think it exists probably now with like younger kids, like 12-year-olds, School of Rock kids who are like playing guitars more and stuff now. Because it's funny, like, I'm just of that kind of world of guitars and stuff, Whereas I remember like a few years ago, my current band, Valley Lodge, we were like gonna do a show at Mercury Lounge where we used to play like pretty regularly, and the booker was like, I'm trying to figure out who to pair you with because you guys actually show up with guitars and you play your instruments. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I don't know if you come here on other nights, but it's like a lot of laptops and backing tracks. And I was like, what? Because I just don't even see music. Like, I'm not a fan, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not what I see. So I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, yeah, we don't, that's not what happens anymore. So anyway, I'm totally digressing, but I think, with Sons of Elvis, we couldn't believe how long it was taking to, get a record deal. We were like, oh my God. I mean, but when you're young, like we thought like if you were over 21 and you got, and you didn't get a record deal, we're like, oh my God, you're like 7 million years old. We were insane.
Right.
We just had no sense of how the world works,
Yeah, well, and then the people you kind of idolize all die at 27, you know what I mean? And like, so of course 21 seems like, fuck, we're not going to make it.
Yeah. I remember, my buddy Tim and I talking, and like we were in school and we were like, well, we'll give this till we're 21. And if it doesn't happen, it was also at a time when having a record deal felt so necessary.
Right.
Whereas now I don't think it's necessary at all, and I think it would suit some people, but I just think in general, it's not really worthwhile for, a lot of bands, but, I forget what my point was. Where was I?
Bringing up Tim, you guys were 21.
Just kind of like, we were just thinking in those terms of like, oh my gosh, like, this is taking so long. I remember like we rented a practice space from these other guys who had a band and were like signed to Columbia, and they were like in there. One guy was like 27 and another guy was like in his 30s. Another guy was in his 40s, and we were like, they may as well have said they were 80,
Yeah.
Like we're just hilarious to me. But it's just youth, like it's like when you're, I remember when I was a kid thinking like Led Zeppelin was some old band, and they had broken up just like a few years before.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is crazy. Like kind of how rock is kind of like the internal, the endless youth, and like, that's kind of what it's aimed at and like kind of pushed at in a way. Rolling Stones and all these groups that haven't quit yet are kind of proving the opposite of it, which is great.
Yeah. Someone said something to me recently where they're like, rock is the new jazz.
Whoa.
And, I'm like, I think there's some or I think maybe it's the first form of music that like, though, I mean, it could be argued jazz. I mean, I guess all forms of music could be argued that people carry it from their youth, but like, I feel like rock is the first music that we're kind of really seeing that people are, you just kind of stay into it. Like, I was just talking to a friend today about like, I went to see Red Cross a couple weeks ago, and they were fucking amazing.
Sick.
And I was like, I'm sure I wasn't the youngest person there, but I seemed like I might have been. I'm sure I wasn't, but I was just like, oh my God, like where, and it bums me out that like, there weren't more younger people. And I saw Elvis Costello, and I was like, I'm definitely the youngest person here. Like in that situation, I was like, how will this music continue? Like there's no 30-year-olds here. It's fucking insane to me.
Yeah. It is crazy to like, I need to put it in the context of rock is the new jazz, in the sense of like, you can like these jazz legends would be later playing smaller clubs and kind of just like studied, you know what I mean? Like that's a very interesting like kind of, and maybe it's the first music to see that in real time, see like how it survives decades. But and like, and it is weird because like, and to kind of touch back on like people playing out of computers and like kind of it is a really interesting crossover where technology's kind of taken music now. And like I'm trying to stay rose tinted because I'm a analog guitar guy, and like you know, we went to the other night, we went and saw Primus, and there was a ton of like young kids in Primus. I was like, all right, well, you know what I mean? It's always interesting like what groups bring different, you know, different people out. So I think it's gonna, there's gonna be people out there for sure hanging on to it. They may be AI people, but
yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the music that it's like, you know, people are, it's like a certain artists are, you know, because if like Primus can find a new audience, then, you know, Red Cross should certainly be able to, or it's sort of just, I think it's just how, you know, how does it happen, you know?
yeah.
Like what, you know, and I don't even know how it happens in most cases, but, you know, for example, like, you know, if your song is in a video game, I'm guessing it probably helps, or like,
Oh, for sure.
shit like
Yeah.
that. Or, you know, like I've toured as a comedian, I've toured opening for Tenacious D, and you know, they have been, around for 30 years, but their crowds are, all ages, you know. It's like they have younger and younger fans all the time, and I think that's, you know, probably part of it is, you know, the fact that Jack is, you know, he's like a huge star in like, you know, so many different ways. You know, he's like in stuff that little kids are into, you know, like, you know, cartoons and stuff like that. So I think there's so many avenues into like how does one discover that band. But if there's not an avenue for young people to discover a band, I think it's probably harder, you know. That's just me guessing, though. I don't really know.
No, I definitely agree. And like I see it kind of firsthand because with some of the kids I work with, they'll be showing me like, oh, you know, Bowser, the guy who does Bowser, he's in this band that swears. So like I think that's definitely like a way stuff is going to be like, or I'll have some kids tell me that like Eminem is doing a live thing on Fortnite. And they're like, what? Yeah, he's going to perform on Fortnite, the game. So there is like this whole strange other way that music is being marketed to kids, man. It is wild.
Yeah. And I don't even know, I only know Fortnite as, I know it exists, but I wouldn't know if you showed it to me. We couldn't pick it out of a lineup of, you know, video games. I have no idea. That's not my.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it's just like, how do you know, and people keep, you know, I feel like AC/DC will continue being wildly popular long after they're gone, you know, and they keep, you know, I think everyone on Earth still learns about, you know, as well they should, you know.
Yeah. No,
find
definitely.
out who AC/DC is.
And like it's kind of, I was thinking about it the other day, it has to be like weird to be like someone who played like with Hendrix or something, and like in you know, he's since passed, and you're like seeing him kind of stay this age forever. Everyone remembers Hendrix for how he was, and like though you're seeing this, you're slowly getting older and everyone around you's getting older, but it would have to be kind of like a trip to see that, and then see kids still wearing Hendrix shirts or Kurt Cobain shirts, you know what I mean? Like these guys that really like made this huge movement, and continually see that change.
Yeah, I don't know, you know, but I don't know. I guess when I go to a show and I'm like, oh, where are all the young people? You know, part of me, like for a long time, I would go to shows, and part of me would like, I would just be like expecting the audience to be whatever age I was when I got into this music, you know?
Yeah.
Like I used to go see Morrissey whenever he came to town. And I would always be like, wait, where are all the other teens? You know? It's like everyone's in their 30s and 40s, and now I'm sure if you go, everyone's in their 50s, you know? Although I'm guessing he's probably getting new fans, or I don't know. He seems to keep going despite his unpopular stances on things.
And a weird one. I went and saw X recently for their farewell tour, and I've seen them probably about 5 times, probably throughout the last, like, I don't know, 15 years. And like, there was, most of the people there were fairly old, which was, it was a sit down punk show. I assumed that's what it was going to be. But there were some still like kids 15, 20, you know, in that age. I was like, oh, cool. You know, and I'm sure they're parents, but like, I think there's always going to be a nook and a cranny that it slips in, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I hope so for their sake. Like, I don't, you know, it's not like I'm like, oh, the world is, you know, has to be into what I'm into. But, you know, but yeah, I hope just for people's, you know, otherwise they're missing out. They miss out on great music.
So after, to take a turn here, after Sons of Elvis, or actually during Sons of Elvis, is that when you started to do banter in between to kind of develop your comedy, or not really experiment in that world? Or
yeah, I mean, you know, with Sons of Elvis, yeah, I would talk, you know, probably to the point of annoyance in between songs. Like looking back on it, it's probably pretty annoying. But you know, I was just doing it for fun, not like looking to like hone any comedic skills, because I had no aspirations towards that, you know.
yeah,
I never planned to become a comedian. Like it was never, you know, something I thought about ever. It was just kind of like really something that happened in my 30s, just kind of accidentally. But I think in realizing, I did realize that I liked talking on stage through, you know, in Sons of Elvis, and then more so, you know, kind of after Sons of Elvis imploded or whatever, you know, briefly had another band called Uptown Sinclair that was fully, you know, formed and based in Cleveland. That was the first band that was like, you know, formed, you know, I guess our only band really. That, you know, we formed it in Cleveland, and well, I was in Corvo Verde kind of at the same time, but I didn't form that band. I was just kind of in it for a while, but yeah, it was during Uptown Sinclair, because we, you know, initially tried to find a singer to form a new band, and then when we couldn't, you know, I was like, well, I'll just do it, and sort of that was kind of when I really like realized like, oh, I like talking on stage. This is fun. You know, I was having as much fun doing that as I was, you know, playing the music, playing the songs. And so I would just kind of ramble like way too long in between songs. Like my bandmates, I think, were like, come on, it's cutting into our set time. But I was like, no. You know, like someone would break a string or amp would blow or something, I'd be like, great, I could just talk until we get this fixed, you know?
yeah.
So yeah, it was sort of, that was, yeah, for sure, like an accidental thing that kind of came of that, but nothing that I was, you know, I wasn't doing at the time thinking like, oh, I'm going to eventually go into comedy. That was just kind of like a weird accident kind of.
So, like, I guess jumping, well, it's interesting because, like, fronting a band, going from just kind of playing and, like, supporting everyone to, like, singing and like writing and leading a group is like a much different headspace to kind of get in. Like, was singing natural for you?
No, I think like, especially with that band I mentioned, Uptown Sinclair, we made one record, and I was so used to writing for the voice, my friend John
Yeah.
Borland, who sang in Sons of Elvis. I was, always wrote, the only songs I ever wrote were written, with the idea that he would sing them. So when I was writing for Uptown Sinclair, I was still thinking that, oh, he's going to sing these, where, even though I knew I was going to. So almost every song on that record is like complete. John had like very powerful, still does,
Yeah.
has a, just kind of much stronger, powerful voice than I have. So I really wrote, kind of like these songs for like someone like who could really belt, which I could not and cannot really do. And so that, that band, I was just kind of like really shredding my voice and singing, really kind of beyond my range. And with my current band, Valley Lodge, which is, a band I've had for a long time now, and the one we have our songs the theme to the John Oliver show on HBO. So we're this obscure band that a lot of people hear every week. But like with that band, my thinking was more like to write, and let me just kind of, my thinking to this day is like, I just write songs. Like if I can't sing them, like sitting down, I generally won't, that then I realize it's kind of out of my range. If I need to like stand up and like really belt, then I'm like, oh, it's not happening. I got to change the key, It's
Yeah.
kind of my barometer for it.
Well, because like I always struggled with trying to find my voice. It took me a super long time, and like I think it's one of those things where it's trial and error. Like you're trying to, you hear the thing you want to hear, and like you really try to get it, but like you're pointing out, it could be more damaging than not. And like
Yeah, and you're also, you're like, I want to sing like this band that I like,
right.
and then you realize like, oh, I can't really physically do that. I mean, I think you can learn and get better, but like some people are really blessed with an instrument, and I don't think I'm one of those people.
Well, I don't know, man. I think what you do with Valley sounds really good, man. Like how you
Oh,
like
thank you.
write for your voice, and like they're just, every record is just like fucking sick pop tunes, like with badass, like it's not like, it's like if I was, because I listened to everything to get ready to talk with you, and I was like,
Oh, thank you.
I was like, this is kind of like if a Queens of the Stone. Some of these made me think of Queens of the Stone Age, like proggy kind of like sick riffs, and then it was just like catchy as fuck though. So it's like,
Oh, thank you.
it's a very interesting like approach to that style of music, and like kind of going through the catalog of bands I can find you're in. I was like, this is a really interesting spot to land, and it's really fine tuned like musical and like lyrical writing. So I guess there is kind of like, as you're finding your voice through these projects leading up to Valley, was it like working with Walt that kind of like helped fine tune to what you're doing now, or were you kind of like writing Valley tunes before you?
You mean Walter Schreifels?
Mink?
Oh, John, that's John Kimbrough. That who had a band called Walt Mink that was named after like
Okay,
a
yeah.
professor in his college. Yeah, I mean, we did that. We started Valley Lodge together, sort of as Walt Mink had broken up, and I wound up in New York writing for television, and so we formed a band just kind of out of like, oh, let's do a band together. And but that was like a thing where he, decided that he didn't want to sing anymore, and I would sing all the songs, and that was kind of how that band worked. I mean, like, when we were doing it together, and then he moved to LA, and then eventually. It's kind of since just been more my thing.
Because like one thing I guess vocally I noticed, like, you have this really specific range you kind of fit everything in, but I noticed on a Fog Machine, I think it's the third song, coming back to bed, go back to bed, coming back to bed.
Oh yeah, come back
I
to
was like,
bed. Yeah.
that's what you were getting into, this lower range of stuff. And like, I don't know, is that like so like as far as, so most of this is just kind of you writing on your own now?
Yeah, pretty much. Valley Lodge. The first record was John and I, kind of pooling together songs we had written on our own and kind of finding like what batch of them made the most sense together. And then I sang them all. And then the next record, which was kind of like, the weird thing about Valley Lodge is I think like every record we've made is kind of like, we made the first record and I kind of thought the band was over. And then, because, John moved to LA and we were kind of, like barely, we were playing as a trio and it was like, didn't really work as well as a trio. And then a label in Japan, wanted to release our record that we'd already released in the States. And, they were like, oh, we need like bonus tracks. So out of that, we ended up recording this second record, which was really supposed to be bonus tracks and ended up being like whatever it is, like 10 or 12 songs. And that was same thing where it was like, I think a few of John's songs. Phil, the bass player at the time, did like one of his songs. And then, but since then, since like the third album, now we just released our fifth album, but since the third album, it's been just me, all, just songs I wrote on my own and no one else's songs.
One tune I really liked off the first album was Over It. And like,
oh, thanks.
Did you play slide on that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's some like George Harrison sounding. That's sick, man.
Oh, thank you.
So the intro I had to you was Metal Grasshopper, and I'm sure you get that a lot. Like, I'm sure you get. How did like, so at that point, like, comedy and music's your thing. How did you like? Did you know Phil? How did that whole bit come to life?
Not at the time. I mean, I had met him once. Chuck Mosley, the original singer from Faith No More, who lived in Cleveland, for a long time until he died. And I played in a band with him. Tim and I did. Tim from Sons of Alice and I went to see Pantera with him, and I met Phil then, which I wouldn't expect him to remember. And but what happened was, White Zombie.
Yeah.
My friend Sean from White Zombie, who's the bass player, she's married to my friend Chris, and so I was friends with them, and they started coming to my comedy shows in New York, and they were buddies with Phil, because White Zombie had toured with Pantera so much. And so Chris Lee, who was in a great band called Supergroup, the one, he's married to Sean. And so he had the idea for like, hey, what if Phil teaches you metal? So of course I love the idea of it. And they had been showing Phil and his wife Kate, like, my stuff, and they were into it. So I like went down there and we went out to, we kind of had like to see if like Phil and I would get along, or hit it off or whatever. I went to their house, like out on the North Shore, like on the opposite side of Lake Pontchartrain. And there was like maybe, I don't know, 6 or 8 of us, and just had a little barbecue, and we hit it off right away. Like, he's a real sweet, like, it's funny, like, I know he has his public persona as this like super intense dude, but he's just like this really sweet goofball kind of guy, like way jokier than I am. Like, if you're hanging out with him, he's just very like kind of jokey, funny guy. And so we hit it off right away. Um, and then, yeah, we sold the series to Adult Swim because at the time they were doing like all these digital, they were doing like 10 digital series that they were going to release, and they shot like 10 of them. And then shortly after decided like, we're not going to do that. So they gave everyone the rights back to their, everyone got the rights back to their thing. And so we just put it all on YouTube, and it really like, yeah, it's still to this day, like one of the, I mean, I like kind of with my career that there's kind of like, there's people that kind of come in from different, avenues. And that's definitely one of them. Like if I go to a metal show or something, there's definitely, it's kind of people are definitely going to come up to me and be like, hey, or now like people will see something else and then they'll be like, wait a minute, you're Metal Grasshopper,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's pretty funny to me that just kind of, because I ended up, it's still, I mean, some of those videos got like, over 1 million views, and even like some of them are like turned into like kind of Instagram and TikTok things where people cut out like a scene of them and post it without even saying what it's from or who I am or anything like that. So yeah, I feel like it's kind of will be with us for a long time.
So was Phil like pitching bits for you guys like as well? Like were you kind of writing it together, or was it just like was the jokiness coming out not just in the hang but in the, I guess how I should phrase that, was the jokiness not just coming out in the hang but also in the making of it?
Yeah, I mean, it was very like, there was a script that, Chris really wrote the bulk of, but Phil was very like not into, just kind of doing the script. So it's very like improv and him just being insane. And I mean that, and it's a huge compliment.
Yeah.
But just kind of like, I mean, in a way, like a lot of it, I'm kind of the straight man because he's just kind of going off the rails. Like we'd be like, okay, we're in this scene, we're doing this, and what ended up happening would be totally not what was on the script or, what we had talked about, and which is, I think, great. Like there's. It's just insane. The whole thing is insane and weird, and I think it turned out really great. And we talk about doing more, but hopefully we will one day. But we'll see. I mean, I still see him a lot, and I'm gonna open for Down, one of his bands. I'm gonna open for them in a few weeks.
Yeah.
In New Mexico, I've opened for them a few times. Yeah, and rode my bike on stage with Pantera.
Oh my god, that's so sick.
Yeah.
Like, I guess so. And you're opening for them with the comedy, right?
Yeah, but
yes.
I mean, I always incorporate like music into my comedy shows at this point.
And I think it's an excellent way to do that, like because there's the musical comedian, but they don't do it like how you do it. Like the guy that's singing and like it's more of the song is kind of the bit, and like you use the music to kind of amplify what you're saying, which is really cool.
Oh, thank you.
Is it like, I guess with opening for Tenacious D, I can see like that panning out really well. Like as far as the audience is kind of already coming for like a kind of a comedic, like in a comedic mindset. With like opening for a band like Down or like another band that's just kind of a band, do you notice like a different reaction? Is it kind of a little harder to get people in at first, or?
It kind of depends, like obviously Tenacious D was kind of a dream, dream come true and dream scenario. And those guys are amazing and also the nicest guys on earth. And that was, those tours, hopefully we'll do more in the future. But the tours that I did with them were like some of the best times of my life, and definitely like shaped what I'm doing, like in terms of like, I finally felt at home, because I always kind of felt like the oddball or the misfit on the comedy shows. And then when I'm opening for like just kind of a straight band, like a non-comedic band, it can kind of feel like a little weird. But in terms of like the artists, the fans accepting it, it kind of comes down to really like, like I opened for Ryan Adams three times, I think, a long time ago, maybe however 8 or 9 years ago or something. And his fans were like super, receptive and like really listened. And I opened for Snoop Dogg once, and it was like kind of like a lot of like kind of like frat bro dudes who really had zero interest in anything happening other than Snoop Dogg, which I totally understand. But that was like, maybe like a quarter of the audience was in like totally into it and paying attention. The rest were kind of like, why is that guy testing the microphone for so long? And then what was the other scenario I was going to mention? With Down, Phil Anselmo's other band, that is kind of a sweet spot because about half of them are fully on board and half are like, what the hell is happening? Which is kind of like my career in a nutshell, and so I really enjoy it. I kind of like the confusion,
Yeah.
And those guys are all, buddies with all those guys, and they're all really funny guys in their own right. And I think part of their brilliance, is the fact that they are like, yeah, let's put a comedian on as direct support for, at this show where people are expecting just heavy music the whole time. Like they'll put like 2 metal bands on and then me, which I think is like hilarious. Rather than put me on, like I opened for Autopsy, if you know them, death metal band.
Yeah.
And like Chris and I are good buddies, and we have a band called Painted Doll. That's kind of like similar to Valley Lodge, but way more like kind of psych rock.
Yeah.
But like he, so he asked me to open for them, and when I saw the listing for the show came out, it was like me first, and then like 3 death metal bands, and I called Chris. I was like, Chris, it's only funny if you put me on direct support, but right before you guys, that's what's so funny. Like, it's not funny if you have me go on at 7:00.
Yeah.
So that's what they did, and of course it was delightfully confusing for a lot of people.
Oh my God. That's a brilliant, I mean, I know he's your friend, but man, next time we get a weird billing and like we get booted from direct support, I'm going to use that line. It's only funny if we're direct support, y'all.
Yeah. Like it's just, it doesn't,
yeah. Which
someone
makes
wants
sense
to do something
in your situation.
different.
Sorry.
Yeah. Cause like, you want it to be like kind of confrontational and like uncomfortable. Not that I want people to be uncomfortable, but
right.
You want that to, it's not, you don't want it to be happening when everyone's just kind of showing up and getting beers. You want it to be when everyone's like, I want to get fucking pummeled by riffs. And then you have a comedian come out. That's the brilliance of Down, I think. Well, aside from their musical brains.
Right. No, that's so sick, man. What was it like? I have a couple more questions, Dave. I really appreciate your time.
I should say real quick, opening Michael Shannon and Jason Narducci, who did, they did the REM tour of, they did Murmur. That was a great tour. I did that a few weeks ago. A few months ago. And so that, that was an example of the crowd was like really great for that. And yeah, anyway, in summation.
Gotcha. And also, it kind of makes sense with Ryan Adams, like that. That it's kind of like a songwriter crowd in a way, so they're already kind of going in listening. You know, that makes
Yeah.
sense that they would tune in quicker than some other crowds. I mean, and also you've done performances with Chris Thiele, and like
Yeah.
with a player like that, like just I mean, I know that there was the Christmas bit, but like just kind of hanging out with a musician like that, like and being able to talk with that. Was it like, were they all in on that, or were they able to like, you know what I mean? Or were you hitting them with the same type of not, you know, confrontation in a way, like the comedic confrontation?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, with those show. I mean, I did that show live from here, Chris Thiele's show when he had that. I did that show, you know, 3 times. So,
So they knew
the
what
first,
was coming.
yeah, well, to some extent, because the band changes all the time. So, uh, so you know, not everyone knew every time or anything like that. So you know, that was what the hell? Sorry, I just got distracted.
That's good.
Focus. Uh, you know, but the thing with it is you know, there's not really not like really going over everything with everybody. So there are things, you know, like in those scenarios where some of the musicians don't know what's going on. You know, so it is, but I think that's part of the fun of it is just like, you know, you don't want in those scenarios where I'm coming out there and kind of being abusive to the band,
Yeah.
you don't want them like in on it and laughing around. And, you know, kind of the more I do it, I kind of have like a you know, kind of a speech that I give like to like explain, because, you know, I do it, I'm hiring bands in cities all over the world, you know, now. So, I kind of have to like walk them through it and just be like, you know, just kind of play and go, you know, but don't be in on the joke, you know, because ends up not being as funny if they're like, you know, I've had like musicians who are, you know, maybe like, oh, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna yell at him when he, you know, and it's like, no, that's not funny. So anyway, I don't know what my point is.
No, that totally, because the honest reaction of that is what makes that bit so funny. Like,
yeah, I think so.
One other question I had in like, because I mean, you do so many things, like, and like, and you're writing so many things, like, so I guess my question with this is like, for writing music and writing books and writing comedy and writing for other things, like, do you have like a writing routine that you do to kind of keep generating new ideas, to keep like on all these different outlets you have?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like religious about it. I wish I were a bit more organized in that regard, you know, to where, you know, I would say like, oh, I write a page in Word every day, which is something I used to do, but I haven't really kept up with it very well. But, you know, I think that's a great place to start, is just kind of do that. Because I did that for a long time. And, you know, the one good thing about it, or it's many good things about it, but among them was the fact that it, you know, made it so I didn't really have writer's block. Like I could, if I allowed myself to sit down and just write about what I had for breakfast, that made it so I could always sit down and kind of create, you know. So that would be the only practice I would say, other than, you know, when I'm writing a book. You know, my 4th book came out in the fall. So like when I'm writing a book, I try to write 2 hours a day uninterrupted. Like that would be like one thing with that, or try to at least get 1,000 words a day. But with, you know, anything else, it's kind of, I'm just trying to kind of stay open to ideas, and really I'm, just trying to entertain myself. Because I think with whatever your medium is as an artist, if I can throw everything together as art, art, which I think it is, I think you really just, um, be the audience for your work, kind of, don't think, I try to never think about, I don't really think about what someone else wants. Like, I don't think like, oh, people would really love a joke about this subject. I don't give a fuck, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you say the things and then eventually you keep the things that they laugh at. But I would never go like, hey, whatever TV shows are really popular right now, I shouldn't talk about that. People like, I don't think about anything that way. Like, and music, I'm never, kind of thinking about, I, I try to make music from a perspective of like, oh, what would I want to hear? Especially as I get older, I think with Sons of Elvis, we were probably more like, yeah, well, we were listening to so much contemporary music that you end up kind of combining a lot of contemporary music and you sound like other bands. But, with like Valley Lodge, I think I'm just ripping off older bands. So it's become something else, or at least consciously ripping off older bands. But I don't know. Yeah, music. Then that brings me. Music is a different thing. Music, I think, I approach as from that, like, just more of a fan perspective, where I'm like, what if I combined this band that I love with this band over here that I love, and then you just kind of have melodies that come to you and stuff. But which is the main thing of how things get done or whatever. Um, but I don't know. Whatever I don't know. I just try to do what I like, and I'm lucky that I've been able to make a living at the things that I love doing for a long time now. That I'm just kind of just thinking. I'm just kind of making things, and then that is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like, I probably should. I wish I were more organized and focused on one thing or whatever, but I just get kind of into stuff and do it. But which is why I think, yeah, I kind of do a lot of different things and I'm spread out, because I get like like right now one of my main projects is I'm writing a comic book series for Oni Press.
Yeah.
Never done it before, and it's exciting because I'm kind of like learning. I don't know anything about, some having notes like of like, hey, you can only have this many speech bubbles in a panel, and
Right.
like learning the format and what works and what doesn't work, and like you can't have this many people saying this many things, because then there's no room left to draw. It's all speech bubble, like kind of things that make total sense. But if you've never done it before, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. So it's fun to be like totally kind of in an embryonic state with something, but I'm getting the hang of it.
That's cool, man. Like, you also did the art on the last two Valley albums, yeah? So are you going to draw any of this comic?
I did the last two Valley Lodge records. Yeah, I did I did the, yeah, and I did the painted doll covers. I'm not going to draw this comic. I it's weird. I don't even know if the publisher knows I draw or not, but so it never came up. But I honestly just don't think I have the chops for that. I don't have the, like, I could do it, but it would take me like 20 years. I don't have like the draftsmanship skills to do that. I wish I did, but I don't.
At least not yet. That's cool, man.
Not yet, but yeah, there's an amazing artist doing it that I'm really excited about. It hasn't been announced yet, so I can't say, but he's like a total badass from somewhere in Europe, but he's yeah, so I'm really excited about it. So it's going to be.
Can you say what it's about?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say
Okay.
even what it's about, but I can say that it's with Oni Press.
Okay. All right.
But
That's
I
so
don't
sick,
know.
man.
I think it hasn't been announced yet, so I can't say what it is.
Fair.
But yeah, it's gonna be cool, and it should be, assuming I get it done. It will be out in next year. So
very cool.
Yeah.
One more question on writing music. I forget which album it is, but one of the Valley albums has the last track is an acoustic cut, and it might be the third or second one. But is that how you write tunes? Do you like kind of compose it on the acoustic and then take it to a band, and then take it from that?
Well, I think that you're talking about the song "Leave Your Man" on the second record.
Yeah.
But that as actually John wrote and sang that one, which is the only song he ever sang on the records. But in general, for me, I don't really play much acoustic guitar. I wish I did. I just don't have like a good one, like one that inspires me too much. And so I don't play it that often, and I tend to, this is horrible, but I tend to really only play much acoustic guitar in the studio. And so there's a lot of acoustic guitars on the records, but no, I tend to because I kind of write songs as I'm walking around, like in my head, and then when I get home or whatever, or if I am home, I'll sort of run to the guitar and figure out like, oh, how does that go? Whatever idea I just had.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like a melody comes to your head, and then okay,
I'll just get kind of an idea and then go from there. Like usually, melody, or like kind of sometimes the whole thing, or like a chunk of a lyric or whatever. Usually it'd be like, the hook of a song will come to me or whatever, and I'll kind of. But yeah, I don't really sit down to like write. I just kind of that's more like in my head.
Okay. Was it because I was like, so like with the song like I Wrote a Song, like that one is so hooky, like every bit of that song is catchy. So was that like just a melody one that came to you?
Yeah, I can't remember really. I think like that one, I might have even just like messed that, after everything I just said, I might have to take it back because I think that one might have come from me playing bass in the studio, just messing around, like while we were recording something else. And I was like, oh, I kind of like that, because it's kind of this, kind of Beatlesy verse bass line. And, but yeah, I think that one, was kind of, I think it came from the bass line actually. I was messing around on bass, and, that's how it started. And then I don't know, I think like that song I could say like, I was probably like, oh, maybe like I'll try to like, because usually I have like a song, like I'll have an idea for a song, and I'll be like, oh, like what do I want to, then who am I going to steal from to finish this? Which is not stealing the chords, but like like what am I inspired by or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
with that song, and it usually ends up not sounding at all like what I'm like. That song, I was kind of thinking, like, I was listening. I really love Big Audio Dynamite, and I
Yeah.
was sort of like thinking, like, kind of like trying to be inspired by them, and so I did that, and I don't know if anyone would ever hear it and be like, oh, that's like Big Audio Dynamite, but it's just kind of what was on my mind,
Gotcha. So it sounds like in a way it's like kind of taking these ideas that come to you and like giving them water to maybe become a plant, or just giving them time to maybe blossom to a thing.
Yeah, I think, just kind of. Also, I don't really feel pressure with music. Like, it's not like there's like some juggernaut, some machine that's like, Dave, where's your new record?
Yeah.
Like, if I never did it again, probably no one would ask. Maybe, maybe like, people that are fans of it would, but it's not like, the only entity that I work with is my music publisher, and it's not like they're like, come on, we need more songs tomorrow.
Yeah.
I don't think, it's not like a pressure. It's not like Taylor Swift where there's a bunch of people counting on her making a new record,
Right.
or doing this or that. There's not a lot of people whose livelihood, there's no one's livelihood that is dependent on me making music, not even my own.
But I guess that's what's cool about having like so many different things going, is it can be relaxed.
Yeah, that's true. Like, there's not any one area where that it has to be thriving at all times. Like like everything has to thrive, for me to keep doing it. I can't put time and energy into something that's not gonna ever blah. I don't know. I'll do things, that I'm into, but the things that I do that end up making money or whatever, I just kind of, I don't know. I don't even know what my point is, but yeah, you just kind of do them, and I don't know. Yeah, like one thing will be kind of like clipping along, and then it'll kind of slow down or whatever, and then the next thing will come along and pick up, and or live shows will die down, and then like next thing I'll get some offer to do. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm back. Whatever. That sort of thing.
Well, I think it's an important thing to hear. At least for someone like myself, that it has like a lot of things going on, and like, but nowhere near as many as like you do, and like kind of putting a lot of emphasis on certain things, but knowing that there is space for everything to kind of valley dip and to peak and valley, and that it all kind of keeps going if you keep at it. And like I just getting to dive into what you do has been super inspiring, Dave. Like the amount of things you do and how good you are at each thing, and just like the endless kind of like enthusiasm for all these different projects you have going on. It's been really cool, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to chat with me, man.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, of course. I'm happy to, and I'm honored that you wanted to talk to me. So yeah,
and
cool.
If you're next time you're in Cleveland, if you need a band, I'll make my guys do it for free.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll probably do a show later this year. So
Sweet.
Let's keep in touch.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
And my dudes rag on me the whole time, so I'm a good actor at it, because that's my existence, man.
Excellent.
But
yeah, let's keep in touch.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig at the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.